Welcome to Disambiguation. I'm your host, Michael Fauscette. Each week, we interview experts in artificial intelligence, generative AI, and business automation to help business leaders understand how to use these tools for the biggest business impact. Our show today is ChatGPT in your strategy, what business leaders get wrong about AI. Now, I'm excited to be joined by Antonio Pace, professor at UT Dallas, teaching AI and quantum computing, and a particular focus on business applications. Antonio, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So, why don't we get this started by just give us a little bit of background, tell us a little about yourself and what you do. Obviously, you're a professor, so I know part of what that is, but just give us a little better background so we understand kind of your framework and where you're coming from.
Absolutely. Well, I have been in the industry for more than 30 years with different levels of education, a mix of technology and business. And more recently, I have joined full time at the University of Texas at Dallas, where I am also the director for the AI and Business Analytics program, the Master Science level program. And I'm also consulting with Zalp Digital, company from Brazil, specialized in AI solutions for clients around the world.
Great. Well, so when we were setting this up and having a chat before we started the recording, you mentioned to me that from what you've seen, business leaders often conflate ChatGPT with enterprise application or enterprise AI. Can you walk us through a little bit of what that confusion looks like in practice, and why that matters for business leaders trying to implement AI in their organizations?
Yes. So I believe that everybody is happy seeing what ChatGPT can do and any of the variations of the LLMs, right? So people
Right.
get, in a state where they see, oh, this is great, this is already solving a lot of problems. But for the most part, it resolves a problem of the individual on their individual tasks, but it does not cover or bring any major solution for the enterprise. So I think that's still a problem to be resolved by the enterprise. They cannot assume that ChatGPT for them would be the final product. It's just another tool, another feature that they
Mhm.
have in their hands, but it's still to be enhanced.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. So from a feature perspective, that's a different way of thinking about the language models and how you use them. So, when you're thinking about that and it's a feature for applications, not an application in itself, what does that mean for companies that are building AI strategies, and what do you think they're missing when they treat it as an end goal versus a feature in an application?
Right. I believe that what they need to understand is how does AI really fits on the workflow of their tasks or their enterprise. Individuals will apply, will do use the AI or the LLMs on their individual tasks, but one has to think, how can I change the way that my team works and add AI being an LLM on an agent or things like that to enhance the full process, not just the individual task, but from end to end. How do you make sure that AI is included as part
Right.
of your enterprise, not you know in
Mhm.
individual points?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I think it is easy to focus on the technology, and a lot of people do, right? Because certainly it's exciting and it's new and shiny. But the truth is, you've got to fit it into your own workflow and you've got to bring your people along with it, or you're really not going to be successful.
Correct. And like what I'm seeing companies do right now is there's a lot of training going on. The big enterprise, they're really training their people because, well, everybody's trying to adopt AI, but how can you adopt AI if you don't understand it? So first you have to train your people.
Mm.
Also, once they are trained, then they will be able to give an input on how to add AI and modify the processes to make it better.
Mm.
Now there's always a
Yeah.
conflict, right? Because like if I add AI here, will it impact my job, so on and so forth. But
Right.
again, I'm optimistic related to AI. I think people will be able to do better and greater things. And
Mm.
yeah, there will be impacts, but if you learn AI and you make your job better and you make your company better, chances are things are going to improve and everybody's going to move forward in a better way. So, trying to be optimistic and train people is the path to go, and give them the motivation to use AI on their day to day, but also bring the ideas to the leadership on how things can be enhanced.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point, and honestly, I mean, I've been involved in software implementation for a very long time, and I think all along the way, when we were doing any sort of transformation, that's generally the point that I thought was missed most often was this is a process issue, a work issue, a change issue, and not just applying a technology, but actually getting the people involved who are in that process so they provide that depth of understanding to help tailor that to their business.
Yep. And while we are dealing with people, so change management is also important, and giving the motivation to people to do the change. Now, there's a lot of thoughts about, okay, I'm adding AI here. Should I change this small process? Should I change the whole thing?
Mm,
There's always this debate. But a lot of leaders that I see right now, they try to do prototypes and nothing gets done because they live in this world of prototypes where prototypes are prototypes, not gonna change. So I'd
right.
rather motivate any leader to don't do a prototype. Like, change something for good and move forward. If you need to change it
Mm,
later, then you will.
yeah.
But leaving the world of prototype, let's do a test, let's do this, like, it becomes those pet projects that nobody really pays attention to.
Mm,
You will always have an emergency to, and your pet project or your prototype is always gonna fall on the cracks. So I would say
right.
do something that is really gonna change and keep moving forward with the change, not
Mm.
just living on the prototype world.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. We used to call those science fair projects.
Yeah,
It's like you get lost in the science fair project and you forget what you're actually trying to do is increase business outcomes in some specific way. And frankly, incremental progress is much better than sitting in that science fair all day long. So that
yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
And I get that people get scared, get concerned. Sometimes calling a consulting company who already has implemented things and done projects can be a good head start on what you're doing. You don't need to have consulting companies doing everything, but sometimes you need somebody to do specific things so that you can understand how it works, and then you can move by yourself forward and doing greater things. But you
Mhm.
know, I think right now a lot of people and companies are moving forward fast. We have seen in the past year a lot of change, for example, on the software development world. Things change dramatically. We've
Yeah.
seen a lot of that. And this is not going to slow down. I see things and I talk to my colleagues
Mhm.
every single day. Like, I call them and say, hey, give me some information here, because I have been very lucky to be friends with a lot of people in the industry who are really, really good, and they are leaders on their companies, they're leaders in their organizations. And I call them to get insights on what's going on. And the change in software development has been fantastic, has been tremendous. But I also see a lot of change in other areas in the enterprise where people are already adopting AI to do many things. There are the
Mhm.
cases that we always hear here and there, like, oh, drugs discovery and things like that. But like, let's not think that things are going to stop there. There are a lot of things changing
Mhm.
on the leader companies or the leading companies that will be very visible, and that's again
Right.
on performance. That's going to
Mm.
show on the balance sheet later on, because the companies are going to get faster, going to get smarter. And if you don't embrace AI, not just for LLMs use, but also for optimization and forecasting,
Right. Hmm.
you're gonna be
Yeah.
behind. Sorry to say, but you have to start moving forward as a leader.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. One of the areas that I hear a lot about is this idea that the enterprise AI is going to replace some of these enterprise systems. Like, oh, I'm going to replace my CRM or my ERP or other core business applications. I mean, what do you think about that? Are we looking for replacement, or is this really moving into a new area of some sort of a hybrid world, a hybrid architecture that combines the best of all of those things?
That's a good question. I think for a while, both will exist, right? You are gonna have certain parts of your workflow be implemented on AI, and certain workflows still present on these big CRMs. Now, some of these software they cost millions of dollars. They are heavy. They permeate through organization, and it's very hard to get rid of it.
Right.
Um, so I think right now, because of AI and everything that's going on, there's some kind of void. Void in the sense that, okay, you have these big, huge old systems that are there, they're present, they are, inside of organization, they don't change. And you have AI presenting a completely new paradigm that everybody's going towards. So how do you get from here to there
Mm.
is a big question. Perhaps for companies that never went and never migrated to one of these big CRMs, they might be in an advantage because now they can go to the newer much
Right.
faster than the ones that are already there. Um, so I think the short answer is both will exist.
Yeah.
Who is going to thrive? I don't know, because if just imagine a company that can adopt AI, move fast, implement these new systems, and optimize much better than the old systems, they might get an advantage in terms of technology there, and even in terms of performance. So I think this is
Mm.
something to see a little bit more until we understand. But
Mm.
yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities actually for companies that will be offering new enterprise systems to replace these old ones. And the old ones, I'm sure they'll be trying to catch up and do a lot of things to to catch up. But again, once when you have a gigantic enterprise software that takes care of companies that are huge, 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 is very, very complicated to do a quick
Yeah.
move.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense because obviously, there's some advantage in an AI native built enterprise application, but at the same time, when you've invested as much as a lot of companies have invested in that infrastructure, there needs to be an interim step, right? That I can use the AI on top of these systems and improve things, and maybe eventually those fade in the background and are replaced, or whatever. It doesn't really matter because I'm operating from the front, not that infrastructure. One of the things that kind of jumps out to me, and I know I hear this a lot, and I when I talk to people, data is the kind of the underlying uh, uh, piece of this that we have to really work through. And so I'm curious about, when you're deploying AI, what do you think companies need to understand about that relationship between the new AI system and their current data infrastructure? And does that lead them to make mistakes, or what should they be aware of from a pitfall kind of perspective when they think about data infrastructure and the new enterprise AI?
Well, I think the common expression that I hear and I repeat is like data is the new oil for AI, at least. And why I say that is because if you don't have the data to feed your artificial intelligence, you get nowhere. Oh, but we have ChatGPT, which has everything. Well, ChatGPT has the generic data. We're talking about your enterprise data, which belongs to you. Um, let's go back like a few years ago, 3 4 years ago. Everybody was talking about data, um, big data, and things like that. Get organized with their data, and a lot of companies just ignore that. Then here we are, 2026, everybody's trying to implement AI. But guess what? Without the data, you have no AI, you have nothing. So I think a lot of companies are still, let's say, two generations behind
Yeah.
in terms of technology to what they can do. And trying to adopt AI is going to just be like, that's going to be a waste of money because if you don't have your data organized, you have no AI. So first, get your data together, understand the process, bring all the data from your process into some kind of database. And then from there, you can start migrating things forward. So
Mm.
again, I think if you don't have your data organized, there's nothing you can do right now.
Yeah.
So maybe
That-
in big companies, you were gonna have silos of departments, say that's where they have the data organized and they can move faster. But uh, if you look as a whole, not everybody's gonna be ready to go. So you have to start organizing things before you can move to AI. So,
mm,
but there are other companies who are organized or they were born like 1 year ago, and they already were born with this mentality of my data should be organized and should be ready to go
mm,
and AI enabled. So I think there's a whole spectrum, um, and that's going to be a big differentiation between the companies as well. Ones that
mm,
are AI enabled, they will be moving much faster than the ones who are not, and they will have a competitive
mm,
advantage, and that's going to be clear to the final users. If you go, to any company these days, and nobody wants to be on the line and waiting like 10 minutes or 50 minutes to talk
right.
to a customer service. You want to get a chat and pop your information and go right away. So if you go to a chat of any company online, and then you get that generic robot who gives you like the pre-recorded questions and answers, like nobody can taste that anymore. Nobody feels good about it anymore because your reference is already a very intelligent system. So
Mm,
everybody's expecting to have an equivalent of a chat GPT on the chat bot, not a pre-made chat bot with questions and answers who are like, filtered already.
right.
And that gives a bad impression to your final client, right? Say, like, oh, these people
Mm,
are living in the 90s or the 2000, early 2000s. Like we are in 2026. I want a chat GPT getting all the information that I need about my data. And I don't want to call anybody.
right.
So that's a big differentiation. And there will be a big spectrum of companies in
Mm.
different levels.
Yeah, it makes sense to focus on the data early because I mean, if you think about that from what I've seen through the years of building these systems and even organizations, right? We created silos around the application and around the business and the way we organize. And yet, when we start to look at these systems, they need this holistic, high quality data picture that underlies everything in the business, not just one little area, but ties all the workflow together, right? So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And just going back a little bit, like should we rebuild everything or incremental improvement on our systems?
Mm,
I think for the majority of companies, incremental is what we're gonna be recommending right now, just
mm,
because the new is gonna demand that your entire organization, at least your department or your silo, understand how this workflow is and can reimagine what the new workflow would be purely using AI.
mm,
I think it's a very limited amount of companies who can really do a completely rewrite and re-implement 100% AI. I think we are not there yet. And while people are doing like, I don't recommend doing pilots. I do recommend people changing their system and adding AI so they can keep moving forward until they get to a point where okay, now we understand how this whole thing can be done using AI, so we can do a complete rewrite of the entire system. But rewriting right now, we just don't know. Things are moving very fast. Tools are not stable in general. Even ChatGPT or these other companies, they produce good results, but are they stable? Not in the sense of release, because every week you have something new. So you have to be careful with a heavy ties to any of these systems right now because the
Mhm.
competitive advantage um, changes within days or weeks between them.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Like, one of the things that I thought was a bit unique about your current situation and perspective is the fact that your business school focused, not computer science focused, right? So it's more of this kind of practical way of looking at the application. So I wonder from that perspective, what does success from an enterprise AI implementation look like? And then how's that different from, the consumer use of these tools that we hear so much about?
So success to me for the enterprise level is start adopting it. Show me some changes, show me some progress, a process that you changed and improved it using AI or some kind of automation. There are areas like customer service is one of them, and it's not hard to automate, and people are already begging for it. The not and when I say it's not the enterprise itself, like is the customers are begging for better services, and AI can really help with that.
Yeah.
So that's to me, it's a very obvious area where people can really automate.
Mm.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually last year in some of the adoption surveys that we did, that was globally, customer service was the number one use case that companies were, going into and implementing and trying to transform because there is such obvious value to that from a business perspective.
Yeah, and the final customers, let's face it, also can be a generation change, but people are
Mm.
very impatient. They want information now.
Yeah.
I remember when years ago I went to do blood tests. Like it took like a week to get your data back.
Ah,
Right
how
now,
can they?
you go to the exam like 2 hours later. You already have in your email here access your exam. Like even on the health, which is a very hard business vertical, let's call it that way,
Yeah.
very hard to change. They already stepped up, and provide that information. So people are very patient when it relates to access to their own information. So
Mm.
there, you want things now, you want things accurate, and I think AI can really help with that.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I mean, that's been a trend from a consumer perspective for a long time, right? I mean, the internet changed a lot of things and made a lot of things instant, and that means I expect everything now to be, nearly instant, if not immediately available, right? So,
yeah, and like since you mentioned internet, like I remember my far past, I was implementing an integration for a health system actually between a mainframe and a front end because the CIO at that moment said it was early 2000s, and he said we need to improve our health systems to provide information to our patients because it's not because we are in the health system that we need to compare ourselves with another health company,
mm,
because the reference is not another health company. The reference back then was it's Amazon. It's
mm,
and Amazon, you buy a book, you get a book tomorrow. So people are already with the mentality that they want information now, and that's early 2000.
yeah,
So the same thing applies here, but now not just web. We're talking about AI now. So people are not patient to wait for a big form to be filled up, etc., etc. Somehow figured out AI has to be embedded on that
yeah,
workflow and make things easier to the life of your customers. And I think that goes across
mhm,
the board. So if you're comparing your business vertical with another company on the same vertical, I don't think that's the vision. The vision should be comparing yourself
mm,
with what the industry is showing, and the industry is showing ChatGPT is the reference now.
mm,
Gemini is the reference now. Grok is the reference now. All these, for development, you have all these different tools as well. So there the reference changed. The North Star changed, and it's not your peer, it's the whole industry.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. Earlier when we were chatting, you mentioned the fear around jobs and job elimination, that sort of thing, and certainly there's been a lot of media attention to the idea that AI would replace people. You think, you know, and obviously some companies are using that as a justification for workflow reduction, but a lot of other factors are involved in that, right? So what's really happening? I mean, should business leaders be thinking about reducing their workforce or augmenting their workforce, or what does this really look like in practice?
When I get that question, I tend to refer to what happened in the past, right? And looking through history, you have chains and big chains where technology came and disrupted, you know, the whole society. So let's say when the trains came up, you disrupted the whole society because to go
Mm.
from New York to California, it took you weeks if you got there because you could have been killed in the path by so many different things. But then the train made it safer, made it faster, so there was a big change. And then you had the automation uh, um, of the industry, where to produce a car you need like a week, and then with the whole automation it came down to a matter of a day or less. So, and then computers came in and internet, so on and so forth. So, but the
Mm.
difference now is the impact of those changes before, for the most part, they were on manual jobs. But now AI is impacting the more intellectual work. So that's a big change that we it's a big change, but it's a difference between this and the past change that we had, um,
Right.
throughout the history. So, do I think that the jobs will be impacted? Yes, I think it is, and I think they are already. Part of the job crisis that we're seeing at this moment in the industry is because of AI, because people are looking to automate things using AI. Are they doing the right thing? I think for the most part, no. That for the most part, it's a good excuse to eliminate the 10% that a lot of companies do every year to refresh their workforce. But there are certain areas that I see a huge impact. And again, I go back to software development. I think the impact there is very clear already with with all the automation. Um, Now you need somebody very senior to be able to produce something very good. Um,
Right.
how do you compensate for training the juniors who are going to eventually come? I don't know. That's a question that I don't have a clear
Mm.
answer. Companies are going to have to invest and bring some juniors to eventually get there. But software development clear is an area that I see the,
Mm.
automation taking
Yeah.
over, and customer service for sure. That's going to be an area that's going to be impacted. Um,
Mm.
but I think as we move forward as well, new opportunities will come. You know, and then this is me reflecting back again, like when the trains came up, there were no mechanics for those trains, so somebody who had to
Right.
become expert on that. When computers came up, a lot of people had to learn how to do software development, and that was a whole new industry. So now with AI, we need to understand how we're going to pair with these tools to make the jobs more efficient. Do I think that humans are going to be completely eliminated from the workflow? I don't think so. I think the workflows are going to be more automated. They're going to be faster, but not going to eliminate the people on the process, especially on the edge cases. For the main cases, and this should be done already. AI, or it doesn't need to be LLMs, any classic AI, let's call that way, regression or grouping. It should take care of
Mm.
these cases already anyways. But because LLM came up and everybody understands and it looks like magical in a way, now everybody's
Right.
paying attention to AI and its real capabilities, and even the things that were supposed to have been done using regression again and grouping or whatever, now they will be doing it on from using these new tools.
Mm.
So yes, there will be impact. There is impact happening. Is it all justifiable? I don't think so. But I think at the same time, new opportunities will come. And again, a lot of my clients, they are educating their people, and I think that's the path to go. Get
Right.
educated. This is why we have also our program at UT Dallas to educate people exactly in this area, so that they can go to the industry, make things better, automate, and be leaders on this transformation. It's People were talking about digital transformation until recently. Now it's really an AI transformation. It's still a digital transformation, but now you have to add AI to this life cycle, and there's a lot
Mhm.
of opportunities right there. How, if you understand the AI tools, you understand a specific vertical, you can create entire new products and
Right.
perhaps replace one of those CRMs that we were talking before.
Yeah.
A huge window of opportunity if you have the right skills.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, it seems to me, you're right. The historical examples pretty much lead you to saying jobs will change and some jobs will be eliminated and the people will have to be reskilled in different things. But it's not like work's going away. I mean, things still have to be done. I mean, even in the coding end, right? I mean, you won't maybe be building the as much of the code directly, but somebody's got to ensure the quality. Somebody has to actually have the concepts about what you want the code to do before you write it. I mean, all
Yeah,
those things are opportunities. It's just a higher skill set, a different skill set than perhaps what they had today. Right.
yeah, I think so. I think so. How the new looks like, we still don't know. The only
Right.
thing that I know is there's opportunity. Therefore, get educated, get prepared, and try to be
Mhm.
ahead. Like
Right.
sitting and waiting for a job description for then you're gonna get prepared is not gonna give you the leads that the advantage that you need to get a job. So get as much education as you can, get
Right.
smarter, and there are resources. Like, of course, at UT Dallas we offer like the master degree, but there are plenty of resources for you to get educated there. A
Right.
good certification from a good university is always good and adds always to your resume, no matter what. But you don't need necessarily to have that certification to move.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. I think a lot of excitement around generative AI and other things, right? I wonder that's created a lot of hype and confusion, right? But where and we talked about this a little bit already, but where would you tell business leaders to focus AI efforts right now? What do you think are the highest value opportunities that, maybe don't require the bleeding edge of effort, but are core and really can show and demonstrate the value of those projects now versus some future thing that may or may not actually come to pass.
Right. Well, I think again, first, train your people because their jobs are gonna be uh, done better with AI. They're gonna figure out how to use it. Second, adopt one of these tools. Be partners with one of these big enterprises.
Mhm.
If you're a Google House, go to Gemini. If you are a Microsoft Copilot, if if you are in love with ChatGPT, go and talk to those guys there at OpenAI,
Right.
or Palantir, whatever. But get partnership and get things going. And if you are afraid of moving forward, again, like just like we have like at Zoppy, we have implemented a lot of different software for many companies, small startups who are native AI or even big enterprise who are transforming. Get help from a company that already have done that, and then you're gonna have a head start and with somebody who already did that. You don't need to know everything, but you need to be friends with the people who know the stuff, and you will coordinate as a leader. If
Mhm.
you are, of course, you as a leader need to understand how things work, but you're not the one who's gonna be necessarily implementing it by yourself.
Right.
You need to coordinate. So surround yourself with people who know what they're doing. Start with the people who work for you, and maybe there's a leader inside of your company who already can be that person. If not, you can always reach out to one of the good consulting companies out there that are going to bring you the value that you need and give you the proper direction right away.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ask for help if you need help. That's yeah, that's good. Right. No, I mean, sometimes that's revolutionary. One of the things I read a lot about, and there's been a lot of attention over the last couple of years, is the fact that AI, you have to have these big data centers, then we need more of them. And for data centers to work, you got to have a lot of energy. I mean, is that really a big challenge? And if it is, how does that relate to scaling the AI effectively, as based on what we know today anyway?
Well, I think this is a challenge, right? Some of these data centers, they demand 10 gigawatts of power, and you need like 10 nuclear power plants to feed that. Is that
Mhm.
scalable? Doesn't sound like, right? And it takes a long time for you to build a nuclear power plant. So it's not something that you're gonna have tomorrow. So it's gonna take a while. And even if you go solar, you need a lot of solar panels to feed that. So,
Mhm.
and people are now starting to talk about, okay, let's build data centers in space. So I don't know if the math checks on that, like it's a lot of money. In any case, building a nuclear power plant, sending things to space, that's a lot of money just to train AI. Is that the final solution? I don't know. I need to see a good spreadsheet that's justified all those investments and make sure that the money will come back. But when you look at the dimension of the money being invested, it's tremendous. Here in Texas, I am in the Dallas area. They're going to build a gigantic one, I think, in Amarillo. Um, and that's a $40 billion investment. And
Mhm.
Amarillo is like far northwest in Texas, almost New Mexico. So it's more or less isolated from the big centers. So not sure where the energy is going to come from.
Mhm.
This is something that I'd like to see. People are saying, "Oh, we're going to solve that," but the solution itself, I didn't see yet.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of motivation. There might be some of those. It might be one of those things where you say, "Let's build it. Let's move forward, and I'm going to figure out." Okay, I
Mhm.
understand. Sometimes things go like that, but at some point that needs to be resolved, and the final solution I still don't know. So
Yeah.
I'll it will be interesting to see because that project, for example, is moving forward, and a lot of other projects are moving forward.
Yeah.
So I need to understand how they're going to harness the energy, if it's solar or if they're going to send things to space. I don't know, but associated to the AI problem, there is the energy problem underneath.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, so let's take a slight twist here because I know you also work a lot with quantum computing, and I haven't really talked about that much on the show, because it is a bit of a future state. So, how do you see quantum computing actually playing into scalability for AI's future? I mean, help the audience understand kind of what quantum computing brings to the table, and why there are companies like D-Wave, IonQ, others that may actually be the next Nvidia or Google or something, right? How does that really play into this discussion?
Okay, so um, one of the big challenges that, as we spoke, for AI is energy. And
Mhm.
quantum computing is one of the hopes that you know that will solve that problem. For example, a lot of the optimization problems that takes a long time to do with AI, you can do it much faster with quantum computing. So
Mhm.
certain algorithms they perform much better using quantum computing versus classic computing. Is it valid for all the problems? No, but there's a lot of research to be done still in quantum computing. If you think about it, we are in AI equivalent to cell phone version 1G. So that's where we are with AI. And quantum computing, we're still doing basic research. Don't get me wrong, there are very strong cases already developed and in production with quantum computing. So it's not a promise, it's a reality. The problem is now
Mm.
with scaling it up because it's still expensive. It's a new technology. There are some challenges still to be done, to be overcome. But in general, quantum computing is very, very strong to solve some problems, and it requires much less powers
Mm.
with a much smaller amount of compute computing size equivalent. So because you don't have like bits, you have qubits with quantum computing,
Right.
and the arrangement of the math, how you solve for that, is completely different. You use quantum algorithms, not classic algorithms. So
Mm.
we need to come up with new algorithms that will be equivalent to AI uh, solutions as we have today. And that has a big promise to solve a lot of problems. So I just came back last Friday from CES, and one
Mhm.
of the vice presidents of D-Wave was talking exactly about this issue of energy versus computing power,
Mm.
and he confirmed that they are pushing towards that. And these companies
Mhm.
are acquiring other companies left and right because they're trying to find the path to optimize hardware, but also they're everybody's like crazy looking for new algorithms and way to arrange software to make it more efficient while using quantum computing. So it's a
Mm.
complicated math. Not it, you know, it's not something that you can resolve with calculus one. It's much more complicated than that. So this is why right now you have a lot of PhDs. But once that problem is solved, an abstraction layer is going to be constructed and it's going to be available
Mm.
to everybody. So you don't have to worry about the details of quantum computer. You're going to always operate on that API level, if you will, and then you'll be able to use. So I think quantum computing right
Mm.
now is the big promise. I am putting a lot of my personal time and effort understanding that. And including next week, we have like a small series of workshop here at UT Dallas to tap into
Mm.
that. So I'm not doing research on the hardware because I think that's for the physicist. Even though I'm a physicist, I
Right.
operate more at the application level, and I already see a
Sure.
lot of gain and again applications being done and working in production to optimize
Mm.
supply chain and other things like that.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of promise there, but I'm curious from a business leader perspective, what should I be looking for? What signals would you say make me go, okay, now I really need to pay attention to this. I should be thinking about how I use this in my business as I build this technology strategy.
Right. I would recommend talk to a specialist or going to these IonQ, D-Wave websites because they already have case like there. See if one of those cases applies to you, and if it does, and if you think that you can optimize your workflow with those, try to see and get a competitive advantage because you can
Mm.
really gain time on your process using that. Sometimes matter of minutes can completely make a difference to a business.
Mm.
uh, and and quantum computing can optimize that. With AI, the Nobel Prize last year, they were basically not the last year, the year before. We're already in 2026. 2024, two of the Nobel Prize were given to AI, basically. Geoffrey Hinton was given because of his
Right.
advances with LLMs and things like that. But the other Nobel Prize was given on the area of I think it was medicine, because they were able to find proteins that allows you to discover new drugs much faster. So when you do the math, the optimization that you got with AI was in the order of billions of years. That's why they got the Nobel Prize. It wasn't
Mm.
because they discovered something small. Like, you saved billions of years of research on the lab by using AI. And I think with using quantum computing, we're gonna have another equivalent leap in performance. And
Mm.
and hopefully, I don't know, hopefully all the training that we take, like months to do right now with giant data centers. Maybe in a
Right.
couple of years, you're gonna be having like a quantum cell phone, and everything's gonna be in your cell phone. Who
Mhm.
knows? So these are fantastic things that I think are gonna happen. I'm again very optimistic about the possibilities.
Yeah, well, put me down for one of those quantum cell phones. That sounds pretty cool, and I really like cool gadgets, so, you know? Well, Antonio, thanks so much. I mean, this is really interesting conversation. We're really, this is as much time as we should allot for this, I guess. But I could definitely keep this conversation going. Before I let you go, though, one of the things I like to do at the end of the show, to help the audience, is get a recommendation to somebody, a thought leader, blogger, podcaster, author, whatever you think might be relevant that you think the audience should check out and follow.
Well, there's so many out there, but I would go like I wouldn't go with somebody specific. I would recommend take a look at these quantum computing companies. There are a lot of leaders there.
Mm,
They are really, really at the edge, and they are doing good stuff. Very smart people invested. So try to understand a little bit of quantum computing and how things are going. I think in terms of AI, we have a lot of resources out there and opportunities as well. Go to conference. I went to CES. AI4 is another one that I like, and there are many out there. So participating to conferences as well,
mhm.
um, and you know, good content generators like yourself. I think they are all always fantastic. So again, pay attention to the companies and what they're doing because they are moving very, very fast.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you. And Antonio, thanks so much for joining today. Really very interesting conversation. So much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
And that's the show for this week. Thank you all for joining us. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the show. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a review to help others find us. For more research on AI and other software, check out arianresearch.com. If you're an expert in AI, generative AI, or business automation, either as a provider or an end user, email your information to disambiguation@arianresearch.com. Don't forget to join us next week. Disambiguation is an Arian Research production. I'm Michael Fauscette, and this is the Disambiguation Podcast.